In 1688, a Swiss physician named Johannes Hofer diagnosed a disease. His patients were soldiers, mercenaries fighting in foreign lands, and they were dying of something no battlefield wound could explain. He called it nostalgia, from the Greek nostos meaning homecoming and algos meaning pain. His prescribed treatments were leeches, opium, and, if the soldier was lucky, a trip back to breathe the air of the Swiss Alps. For centuries, longing for the past was treated as an illness. Today, millions of people feel that same ache for a home they never left, because it isn't a place, it's a decade. Nostalgia didn't stay a disease. By the 19th century, it had been reclassified as a kind of melancholy, a mild insanity brought on by an inability to accept progress. It took until the 20th century for psychology to rehabilitate it. Sociologist Fred Davis broke it into 3 layers. Simple nostalgia, the flat belief that things were better then; reflexive nostalgia, which starts to question whether that's actually true; and analytical nostalgia, which asks why you're longing in the first place. Cultural theorist Svetlana Boym went further, splitting the feeling in 2. Restorative nostalgia wants to literally rebuild the lost home, treating an idealized past as sacred fact, the instinct behind political movements that promise to return a nation to greatness. Reflective nostalgia does the opposite. It lingers in the longing itself, aware that the past is gone, finding something closer to bittersweet irony in the ruins. And there's a word for the strangest version of this feeling, stranger than nostalgia. It's called anemoia, a longing for a time you never actually lived through. Coined by writer John Koenig, it describes something increasingly common in people who weren't alive for the 1980s or 90s, yet feel a pull toward them anyway. The explanation isn't sentimental, it's neurological. Philosopher Philippe de Brigard has shown that memory and imagination run on the same cognitive machinery in the brain. When you remember, you're not replaying a recording, you're reconstructing one, which means the brain can build a vivid, emotionally convincing simulation of a decade it never witnessed, using nothing but secondhand fragments, a parent's story, a grainy photograph, a song on the radio. Researcher Daniel Laidler calls the extra ingredient hagioptasia, our tendency to project a false sense of specialness onto certain eras, the same illusion Andy Warhol once called aura. Combine that illusion with the mind's gift for mental time travel, and you get anemoia in full, a rosy, filtered daydream, stripped of everything that made the real decade difficult to live in. You're not imagining the past, your brain is building it from the outside in. So why build it now? Why this decade? Look at the texture of daily life today. The average member of Generation Z spends 7 hours and 38 minutes a day looking at a screen. Close friendships are shrinking. In China, researchers have tracked the average number of close friends falling to just 5, part of what's being called a global friendship recession. Independent venues and festivals are closing. Even public behavior has changed, where the old social contract discouraged disrupting strangers. The incentives of social media now reward the opposite: performance, friction, outrage, all for an audience that isn't actually there. Compare that to the world the mind is reconstructing. The 80s and 90s are remembered, accurately or not, as a slower, more solvent baseline, lower inflation, higher real wages, housing that an average earner could actually afford. Errands were handled by another human being, not an automated phone tree or a self-checkout kiosk. No algorithm decided what you'd see before you decided what you wanted to see. This is what researchers call akenia, a low-grade, dizzying anxiety produced by a world too complex to fully grasp. And the mind's response to a world that feels too complicated is to retreat to one that felt, at least in memory, simple. You can see the coping mechanism everywhere once you know the name. In kidulting, adults collecting the toys and gains of their childhood, or, in the case of McDonald's reviving its adult Happy Meal with retro 80s collectibles, an entire industry built to sell that retreat back to you. Psychologist Clay Routledge argues this isn't immaturity at all. It's resilience, a way of constructing a familiar shelter to stand in before facing the modern world again. But this isn't just a private coping mechanism. Cultural theorist Mark Fisher gave it a name: hauntology. The idea that contemporary culture is haunted, not by ghosts of people, but by ghosts of futures that never arrived. The space stations, the flying cars, the bold, optimistic visions the late 20th century had of what the 21st would look like. None of it happened. Instead, Fisher argued, something stranger happened. Time itself seemed to slow down. He pointed out that you could once tell the sound of 1975 from the sound of 1985 instantly. But somewhere around 2003, that specificity started to dissolve. Culture stopped moving forward and started circling back. 21st century life spent largely consuming 20th century aesthetics, just delivered through a sharper screen. We didn't get the future we were promised. We got a loop. And the loop is profitable. In the mid-20th century, public investment, grants, affordable education, subsidized housing gave working-class artists room to take risks. That scaffolding is largely gone. Rising tuition, high debt, and inflated rents now push artists toward whatever sells immediately. Meanwhile, independent labels and diverse media ownership have given way to a handful of dominant corporations, and the appetite for risk has collapsed with them. Theorist Frederick Jameson called the result the nostalgic mode. Not a longing exactly, but a formal habit, recycling old genres, old formulas, old intellectual property, because the old thing is a known quantity and the new thing is a gamble. It's why a show like Sex Education can deliberately blur decades into one timeless setting, and why the box office still runs, decade after decade, on properties invented before most of its audience was born. The past isn't just remembered anymore, it's relicensed. Nowhere is this tension clearer than in two genres born from the same decade of source material pulling in opposite directions. Vaporwave takes the sounds of 1980s consumerism, elevator music, corporate training videos, easy listening ballads, and slows them down, loops them, pitches them into something unfamiliar. It doesn't glorify that era. It haunts it, treating a comforting commercial jingle the way Dadaist collage treated advertising, repeated past the point of meaning until what's left is uncanny. It's a critique wearing the mask of the thing it's criticizing. Synthwave does the opposite. Neon horizons, driving arpeggios, an idealized 1980s that never quite existed. Pure escape, no irony. And its closest relative, Japanese city pop, born in the wealth of Japan's 1980s economic bubble, offers the same fantasy, a soundtrack for a high-flying urban luxury salaryman lifestyle. Fittingly, city pop's own roots trace back to disco, a genre forged in the underground Black, Latino, and queer club scenes of post-Stonewall America, nearly destroyed by backlash at home and reborn overseas as the soundtrack of somebody else's boom decade. One genre mourns the decade, the other tries to move back into it. Both are responses to the same absence. That absence has a physical counterpart too, and it shows up somewhere unexpected, the humble CRT television. This isn't the first time a leap in technology has triggered a retreat to something slower. The Industrial Revolution produced the arts and crafts movement. The post-war boom produced a return to gardening and letter writing. Today, it's producing digital minimalism, a term popularized by Cal Newport and its quieter cousin, Posting Zero, choosing to simply not perform yourself online. Nowhere is that retreat more literal than in retro gaming. Plug a 1990s console into a modern flat screen and something goes wrong. The screen has to guess, rescaling and deinterlacing a signal it was never built to read, and the result is blur, lag, distortion. But plug that same console into an old CRT and the picture snaps into place. That's because CRTs don't have a fixed grid of pixels. They draw the image line by line, with an electron gun generating natural scan lines that the original pixel artists designed for. The old technology and the old art were made for each other down to the phosphor glow. There's a second reason collectors seek these sets out. They're repairable, built with sturdy, through-hole components instead of the sealed, disposable circuitry inside modern displays designed for planned obsolescence. In an age where nothing is meant to be opened, a machine you can actually take apart and fix starts to feel less like nostalgia and more like resistance. A CRT is heavy, it bulges out the back, it takes up space in a way no flat panel ever will, and maybe that's the point. In a world built to be frictionless, disposable, and endlessly optimized, we keep reaching for the thing that pushes back, that has weight, that can be opened, that was built to last. We're not just missing an era, we're missing the feeling of something built to be kept.